put it on this guy, and then we're gonna do that. Oh god, don't die, don't die, don't die. Ah! Oh my god. Hey there everyone, this is Jesse, and today we're testing out the new native controller support that was just added in the Dragonflight pre-patch. All testing for this video is done in world content as well as the new Uldaman dungeon, which offered the highest difficulty without the potential for screwing up anyone's lockouts or keystones. Just a note on the video, I do have a little bit of a cold, so I apologize for the nasally voice. I'm just going to go ahead and go through a general overview and then to each of the roles I tested, and then at the end we can discuss how I made it all work. All right, so let's go. My first thoughts on using a controller were generally positive. I consider Final Fantasy XIV to be the gold standard for MMO controller compatibility, and while the default WoW controller experience doesn't quite measure up to Final Fantasy XIV, which does still have some quirks by the way, it's actually not that far off. So we'll start with the tank. Since tanking is basically a melee DPS with mitigation mechanics, okay, yes, I know it's not quite that simple, don't at me. I thought this might be an easy one to test. In what will probably be a theme for this video, the main issue is going to come down to targeting. Action targeting works well, more on that later, but leaves you pretty limited when it comes to precision moves like interrupts or taunts, especially in dungeons where you're likely to be pulling large packs. This may limit the viability of controller play in higher level content like Mythic Plus, or over a certain level at least, but overall I can see this working up to even low level keys. My only real issues other than targeting specific enemies were establishing the muscle memory to know what buttons on the controller corresponded to which cooldowns, a problem that would be easily solved by just kind of playing more. Okay, so on to healer then. Healing with a controller is a bit of a different animal. Action targeting works very well for melee DPS or tank classes, aside from the aforementioned targeting issues, but as a healer needing to quickly use targeted heals on allies, you're in a bit of a different situation. I'm sure there are better solutions out there than what I did, but the best I could come up with was to make a macro to target party members that I bound to different directions on the D-pad. Then I used the escape button to drop my target if I needed to heal myself. With some practice, it worked out okay, and in testing, I only lost people when they were out of range or took too much burst damage to heal anyway. So could healing with a controller be viable? Maybe, but you'd really need to find a better solution than I did to make it work for anything higher than Mythic 0, I think. Okay, so that brings us on to DPS then. As I'm sure most people could guess, this one was definitely the easiest to get used to. Right off the bat, I'd say my only real issue, like the tank, was remembering my buttons. An issue that would be easily remedied by naturally using it more. That being said, there was a bit more of an issue as a ranged DPS, since action targeting is a little harder to manage the further away you are. Something I really liked about the control scheme in Final Fantasy XIV was the ability to open different control menus by hitting different patterns of the left and right trigger button. For example, hitting left trigger would open one menu, hitting right trigger would open another, and then hitting left trigger and right trigger would open a completely different menu. Each of these menus can have overlapping hotkeys as well, allowing you to use a much wider range of abilities with the same buttons just based on which menu you have opened. The extra benefit of that was that you could use a program called WASD to bind the tab key to a button on the controller, so you could still use tab targeting just like you normally would with a keyboard. It seems like it would be possible to do this with the standard WoW UI, sort of, but for some reason they don't let you bind the right trigger and the right shoulder buttons on an Xbox controller with a modifier key, like RB plus X, for example. I don't know why these keys and modifiers are locked the way they are, but if they allowed you to bind keys in this way, I think it'd be a real competitor for Final Fantasy XIV's control scheme. So criticisms aside, I still think it's a great way to enjoy low to mid-level endgame and world content. So let's talk about how to set it up. First, you need to enable it with a console command. It was not an option in the menu, which is kind of strange for something that is officially supported. By default, right on the D-pad functions as an interact key. Looting, talking, etc. A will jump, right trigger functions like left click, start opens up the map, and select will either drop the target or bring up the virtual cursor. Essentially the escape key, but it doesn't bring up the escape menu. So now we need to set our default key bindings. To do this, open up the game menu with escape, click on edit mode, and right click on any action bar. Then select quick keybind mode. Quick note before you begin though, I did notice some quirkiness if you move, so try to stay still during this process, or you might need to hit cancel and start over. So you can see here on my screen, I have 3 action bars. I set up my main rotational abilities using X, Y, and B, leaving just native A out because that's jump. Then I used the same keys with the left trigger and left bumper modifiers. Again, that is just my main rotation. Then for my less often used abilities, I use left bumper and left trigger at the same time, plus X, Y, B, or A. And for my cooldowns, I use left trigger and or left bumper and the directional keys. This seems to work pretty nicely for me, but of course you're welcome to set yours up anyway that feels right to you. As for targeting, I turned on actioning targeting for my DPS classes and used macros to target different party members when using the healer. Again, this works for me after practicing a bit, but something else may work better for you, so I would encourage you to test different ideas. And if you do have a better method, leave it down in the comments so we can all benefit from it. Another thing to note is that using WASD and an Xbox Elite controller, you have some back shoulder buttons that you can use to bind to extra functionalities. So you do get to add in stuff like the tab button and some other modifier keys. So if you can use an Xbox Elite controller, I would highly recommend that. And that's the basics for using the new official Blizzard supported controller settings made available in the Dragonflight pre-patch. What do you think about these new controller settings? Do you like them? Do you plan on using a controller? Let me know down in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching the video. We'll be back again soon with some more Dragonflight content, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And until next time, see you later.